Trenton TV and our great station here on WIMG 1300 AM, our 4-time Stellar Award-winning gospel station, Music for the Soul. We have an awesome opportunity today to have a great presentation from our board secretary, Jane Howard, our business administrator. And I want to welcome you to Trenton Talks on WIMG 1300 on our Facebook Live page. My name is Gerald True. I'm your host. I'm a board member for Trenton Board of Ed. I chair the Family Community Engagement Committee as well as the Policy Committee. And my colleagues, Patty Daniels-Lane is the president of the board, and she chairs the Curriculum and Curriculum Instruction Committee, as well as Jeannie Weeklam, who chairs our Facilities Committee. Yolanda Lopez is our vice president. She chairs our Human Resources Committee. We have Jean Bowie, a board member who chairs the Operations Committee. And we have Teron Tice on our Policy and HR Grievance Committee, as well as Denise Johnson, that is on our Policy Committee and also our Family and Community Engagement School Support Committee. So I want to thank our sponsor, WIMG 1300 AM, for a great sponsorship. You can catch us tonight at 7 p.m. on WIMG 1300 AM. I want to thank our superintendent, Mr. James Earl, for his support and for his commitment to our school community. We have an exciting program tonight. We're talking about our FY23 or fiscal year, school year budget that begins in July 2 with our school administrator, Jane Howard. She's going to have a presentation. She's going to share with us the budget. We're going to have the opportunity to ask questions. If you're in the chat, please ask your questions as Jane goes through the budget, and we'll have an opportunity for Q&A to share in that conversation with our community. So, Jane, take it away, Jane.
Okay, good evening. Can you make that a little larger, Denise? My name is
Jane. As we get started, I forgot to mention my co-host, Denise Crease, our parent coordinator and homeless liaison. I want to thank Denise Crease for all the great work she's doing in our community and serving on the Trenton Public Schools. Go ahead, Jane. I wanted to forget about Denise Crease, my good friend, our co-host on the show.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jane Howard. As Mr. Trueheart said, I am the School Business Administrator, Board Secretary at Trenton Public Schools. Today, it's an honor and a privilege to be before you today to give you just an overview of our 22-23 budget and show you all the wonderful investments that we have in a budget that's aligned to our students and staff. It is essential, however, to provide you with this information so you can understand, our viewers, that our number one priority is to ensure that everything we do, our students are at the core, and it's a route to financial effectiveness. So with our mission statement in place and our vision for the district and its children, then we really have our blueprint in order to start our budget. So everyone know what our mission statement is because, you know, Addie Lane and everyone goes over that every day. So I won't go into that. But I don't know if everyone understands that our 5 pillars, which is our strategic plan, which was approved last year during the budget presentation, is 1, student achievement, 2, community engagement and partnerships, 3, developing the whole child, 4, staff development and well-being, and 5, facilities, infrastructure, resources, and safety. So with that being said, our budget was built on these 5 categories. So everything you see as far as the budget highlights and our funding will be aligned to one, if not all, of our strategic components. So we can go to the budget highlights. Denise. Okay, and I hope everyone can see this, but I will go over it. So for the 22-23 school year, as I stated, we had 5 components. So as we were looking at the 5 components, the superintendent and our assistant superintendent for talent, teaching, and learning, she provided us with the instructional framework. It's like having a blueprint. If you're building your home, you need to have what is your blueprint. So this was our blueprint in order to fund, right? We can't just fund without having a blueprint in front of us. So if you look at our instructional programming, in this blueprint, it was said that we want to increase achievement for all students in literacy and math. improve the effectiveness of academic interventions for student subgroups. We're getting a new math adoption, 6th through 12th grade, new science adoption, 6th through 8th grade, and new language arts pilot programs, K through 8th grade. And this is a wonderful tool because this will be the first time that we're doing pilot programs. So then we can have data to see what will work for our students and what won't work for our students. Then we're going to improve instructional programs to ensure students are college and career ready, and extend summer offerings for all staff and students. So if we look at this instructional programming piece, we know this is tied to strategic plan component number 1, student achievement. Then there's the gifted and talented piece, increase advanced opportunities for students in grade K-6, and also expand AP offerings in grades 9-12. Special education, which is to try to keep our students in the least restrictive environment, and bilingual and ESL programs. We're expanding both programs and our SLIFE program, which will serve students who have significant interruption in their native language. So that's all component 1, which is student achievement. Then we'll go to community engagement, partnerships, parents. We have parental involvement, which is continue to fund our parent liaisons district-wide, fund the position of coordinator of parents, which is a wonderful position. And we have a wonderful person in that position, our very own Denise. We also want to increase community partnerships, parent engagement, and access to resources to support student achievement. Now, this will go under component 2. Then we have counseling wellness services, which is component 3, which is developing staff development and well-being, also developing the whole child. You know, I don't want to read everything, but there we will continue to service and provide assistance to students and families in areas of counseling and family support, provide social and emotional support K-6. We're also going to expand youth, school-based youth services in middle and high schools. So you see that's a full continuum, K-6, which would be leader in me, and then middle and high school, which is school-based youth services. Continue to train on all staff on trauma-informed practices district-wide, and continue to provide nursing services school-wide and provide substance abuse counselors in our middle and high schools. Then we're going to have professional development, which will focus on best practices that will help increase student achievement and student learning, offer extensive training in cultural competency, sheltered instruction, and restorative practices. Provide staff with opportunities to engage in their own well-being, which would be under staff development and well-being, which is component 4, and improve recruitment and retention of highly qualified staff members. Then we have our before and after school programming. We have transportation, which I know a lot of our parents reached out to us to see whether their students will be transported for the 22-23 school year. And we will continue to transport all students that are remote, which is 2.1 miles, right, beyond for elementary and 2.5 for middle and high school, right? We're also looking to provide additional bus drivers. We know there's a shortage, but hopefully we can attract more bus drivers so we can have our own in-house. We have our in-house fleet of buses. Now we need more bus drivers. For security and safety, we're looking this year to bring in safety officers in our middle and high schools. We still want to keep a vendor and our security guards in elementary and in our middle and high schools, but we will have like a point person who will be the safety officer for just our middle and high schools. And then facilities and technology, you know, we're doing a lot. We're making sure that we fund computer support in every school, that we purchase computers and software for every school. We are also looking to fund advances, right, in installation and use of technology in the instructional spaces. and we're going to increase the district's capacity to maintain our aging facilities. We're doing a lot of upgrades in our schools, and to ensure that there's air quality. We have our environment specialists out at all of our schools, so we can ensure when everyone, well, they're here now, but for the 22-23 school year, our new schools, along with our existing schools, all meet that air quality test, and we can ensure that our parents and our students that it is safe to come into Trenton Public Schools, because we are investing a lot of money in our schools. So with that being said, we'll go into like a really budget process. So as you see from the budget highlights, that's the core, right? That's our blueprint. And that's what we use to then fund our budgets. So Denise, if you can go to budget process and budget priorities. So with all that mouthful that I said with budget highlights, our budget priorities are really simple. We focus on ensuring that every possible dollar is invested in our students' diverse needs, empowering staff members to grow through focused professional development, thoughtful realignment and reallocation of resources, identify all operational efficiencies, and ensure spending is aligned to the strategic plan, as I discussed earlier in this presentation. Now, this is very important for our viewers because I know a lot of times people wonder, well, where does your dollars come from? So if you will look at this slide, it's very important because this is our revenue slide. Where does funding come from? Excess fund balance, 17 million. That's 4.2% of our budget. Now, this is an amount that you won't see every year, because this is saying that our district spent, according to the state guidelines, and we did have our 2% and our 4% allocation that you should have as far as fund balance, but we had excess over that. So anytime you receive additional, you have to add that to your following year's budget. So that's the excess fund balance. Then we have our local tax levy, which is from the city, which is almost 6% of our budget. And that normally goes up 2% every year. We have rentals of our buildings, which is very minimal. Medicaid reimbursement, which is by law, which is semi, that's about 0.2% of our budget. Miscellaneous revenue, the biggest portion in there is E-rate, which is us being reimbursed for our communications through E-rate. Now our state aid, which is very important, because if you see, state aid is 75% of our budget. So we are basically funded by the state, as everyone sees, right? And in that state aid, there's equalization aid, which is what? Your per pupil, your base amount. So that is saying that if you have elementary students, they should receive $12,000 per student. Your middle school receive an additional 1.4%, and your high school students receive an additional 1.17%. That is your equalization aid. Also within the state aid, you have additional weights that is used for at-risk students, our LEP students. And then if you have the combination of at-risk and LEP, you receive additional funding. Then you receive 2/3 of your SPED funding, which is 15.93% of your total enrollment. And lastly, you receive another amount for transportation, right? And security aid, which is the number of students that are remote, and security aid, which you receive around $70 each student. And if you're at risk, I believe it's another $100. So that is what makes up the state aid. And then our grants, which is $62 million, which is 15% of our budget. So if we look at this visually, and I hope you guys can see this in our viewers plan, see state aid is 75%, grants 15%, excess is 4%, local tax levy 6%, rentals, miscellaneous, and semi is very small. But we receive the bulk of our funding from the state. Okay. Next, we'll look at our expenditures. And this is where dollars are spent. Now we looked at where we receive funding from. Now is where are dollars spent? Okay. School base. What does that mean? All of our children that are based in our 22 schools. That's almost $144 million. So 34.3% of the 419, which is our total budget, goes to school base. Charter school is about $50 million for charter school, which is 12%. Out of district tuition, which is for our SPED students and some gen ed students, is about 9%. The adult program, which is very small, which is students overage, undercredited. Then we have central office budget, which is 27%. But I want to point out that that's not central office looking at superintendent or business office and that so forth. It's central office, child study, transportation, buildings and grounds, medical, and athletics that support our schools. District-wide is district-wide benefits, which is unemployment, property and casualty, things of that nature. Grants, as I went over, 62 million. And the reason why there's a negative 4 million, almost 5 million, because that amount also is placed in our school base. So you couldn't show it twice. So by law, we have to put $5 million, which is the blended piece, in our school base funding. So I know there'll probably be a lot of questions on this. So, whenever the viewers are ready, I'm ready to respond. But Denise, you can continue with the PowerPoint. Yeah, so this shows that the percentage. As you see, school-based, of course, receives the bulk of our funding. Although we give a lot to charters, a lot to out-of-district, Central is, the majority of Central is also supports the schools, as I mentioned earlier, district-wide, and then grants is 13%. Okay, so now as we're looking at this slide, and I want you to really take a good look at this. This is a money bag. It says $419 million, right? 936, 797. That's the total amount of funding we receive. That's a lot of funding, correct? But now I want you to go to our next slide to see how much is really left over that's not obligated that we really can spend. Grants, as we spoke about, is almost 63 million. You have charter schools, 51 million. Out of district, almost 37 million. Salaries of all employees is about 137 million. Benefits, and those are the benefits that are your health, dental, prescription, 28 million. Other benefits, which is your unemployment, your property and casualty, your payouts, Social Security, all of that is about 15 million. Stipends, around 6 million. Substitute agency, about 8 million. Transportation, 8 million. Utilities, about 10 million. Security, 4 million. Copiers, dues, 653,000, and tuition, which is tuition reimbursement for our employees, is about $550,000. So if we look at all the 419, what's left over, right, is $53 million. And that's normally what we look at that's given to our superintendent and our assistant superintendent for teaching and learning. And that's where all of our, the new adoption that I spoke about earlier. I believe we're getting science and math. And we're also receiving pilot programs through language arts and all of the other wonderful things that we're doing in the curricular office. This is the pool of money that is taken from. So I know it seems like a lot, 419 million, but when you look at all of the obligations and the fixed costs, it's $54 million. which I'm sure is an eye opener with everyone probably still trying to digest that. But I wanted to bring this to our viewers' attention because when they see 419, they don't understand the obligations that go along with the $419 million. Okay, Denise, our next slide, which is, I spoke about that. So if we can go to our next slide. So as everything I spoke about, all of our wonderful investments that I talk about, our budget highlights, and everything that we looked at prior, now you can see, okay, let's look at our per pupil amounts, right? So as we're looking at that, if we look at 2020, that was actual, right? 2021, that's an actual amount. 2022 is current year that we're in, the 21-22 school year, and 22-23 is what's budgeted. So if we look at per pupil costs, which I already spoke about, I said within the state's funding formula, our per pupil costs are $12,000, right? We spent 15 in 2020, right? Which is the first year we went out on a pandemic, I believe in March. For the 2021 school year, it was 13 because we were out up until May because of the pandemic. This current year, which is 21-22, we spent currently around 19, but for our upcoming budget for the 22-23 school year, it's going to be about $21,000 per student. So as you see, we have 100% invested in our students. Classroom instruction went up from 9 to 8, 10 in the current year, and then we budgeted 10. Our school support services went up with social services and our different agencies to support our students with the social and emotional piece. You see that went up. Total administration went down from our first actual year. Of course, in 2021, that was the pandemic. We came back in May, but the current year is 1.4, but for 22-23, because we opened up 5 additional schools, which is Cadwalder, Stokes, Robeson, Holland, West, excuse me, and I believe it's another, Jefferson. So of course the administration will increase. And then of course our total operations and maintenance because of all the work that we're doing in our schools. So to recap, we just wanted to say that first of all, we increased our funding. The district received $22 million from the government, state. But in that, we invested directly $7 million to our schools and indirectly $27 million, as I explained, with transportation, buildings and grounds and so forth. We had many technology and facility upgrades that we will have for the upcoming school year. And more importantly, we have to make sure that we manage our financial risks so that we're not in a situation for the 24-25 school year that we're looking to reduce some of the wonderful things that we put in place. And our number one goal, which I always say, which is very difficult for some, to understand, that our job in the business office is to align the alignment of resources. So we take our instructional goals, right, which is our blueprint, right, and we have to make sure they're aligned with our budget funding, because there's an old, a saying, if you don't know where you're going, right, then any path will take you there. So for us, we have to know where we're going, which means that I have to have that blueprint in order for me to move forward, right? Because without plans in place, what does that say? School finance and school budgets, they just can't exist. So lastly, I just would like to say how your budget is developed, right, implemented and evaluated will only contribute to the success of your goals and, more importantly, our students' success.
All right, Jane, I was scoping out on Facebook Live to see if there's any question. There was a question that popped up from a parent, and she wants to know, what is the process of becoming a bus driver?
Oh, the process, I don't know all, but she can give me a call so I can really find out from our bus trainer. But I know you have to go to DMV and apply for a CDL. And then after that, we would have to take you out because you would have to get a P and an S endorsement. Because a P is just you drive trucks, S you can transport students. But we would do that type of training for you because trust me, we need many bus drivers. And I believe, and I probably shouldn't say, but I should, we're the highest paid in the state as far as bus drivers. So it's wonderful. I think that's an excellent question. And if she can, if you can give her my email address, Denise, and have her reach out to me directly, I would really appreciate that.
I will. And another question that parents may have, when you reference grants, can you talk a little bit more about where do these grants come from? What, are we just talking about Title I grants, or are we talking about private grants? Can you explain that a little more?
Sure, of course. It's all grants, right? We have Title I, which is improving teaching and learning. Title II, which is PD. Title III, which is bilingual and immigrant. And then our Title IV grants. We have IDEA, which is for our special education students. School-based youth services, which supports the high school and our middle schools in social and emotional needs and youth development needs. We have non-public grants for our non-public schools, which is Garvey, I believe Islamic and Trenton Catholic. Then we have our ESSER, our SIA, which is School in Need of Improvement. And those are the grants that are given to 8 schools, which the state considers in a comprehensive label, which means that we need to give them additional supports to bring them up to our other schools. We also have ESSER 1, 2, and 3, which is, I believe it was sunset March 24. And with that, they gave you different buckets you can spend the money on, which is learning loss, mental health component also in ESSER, and it's one more component. I know it's learning loss, mental health, and facilities. So we do have a lot of funding with our grants, which is at 62 million. We have to make sure that as we're looking at, we have an overabundance of grants, now we have to make sure that they are purposed, right, which is sometimes very difficult to have them purposed correctly, so we can make sure they're spent. And that's the hardest challenge, I believe, for all districts, especially a district our size, to make sure the funding has been purposed and spent. Now, we have no problem spending our general funds. We just have to make sure that we also spend our grant funding, because it's really a marriage. You shouldn't have them separate and apart. You're making plans for your general funding and forget about grants. It should be intertwined, right? And that's something that I believe we all should, a better job of working with our grants. But thanks for the question, Denise.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go.
So Jane, on the
Mr. Ortiz, I didn't see.
I've been here. Excellent presentation, by the way. But as you looked at the commitments that we have to make, right? That we have like 50,000 to charter schools, and we had so much money committed. There was 36 million commitment from grants. What is that? What are those grants committed to?
Well, now let's go back to it.
That slide, remember that slide?
You said committed. Where did dollars come from?
No, not where they come from. Where are we getting?
Oh, understood. Let's go back. Grants, if you go up top.
It looks like that's money that we receive. That's money that's going out.
What? No, this is everything that's going out. That's why it's only 53 million at the end.
Yeah, but look at we give out 36 million in grants also.
Grants?
Let me see. You see? No, go back. Continue going. Go ahead.
This one?
Keep going. Keep going. See it there? Grants, so charter schools give 50 million.
Right. Charter schools, grants, the reason why grants is taken out of the 419 because they are earmarked specific to that particular purpose, right? So 62, okay, you have 419 million dollars. So when you take away 62, which is grants, that's the grants we spoke about where it said, where does money go and where does money come from? Then our next obligation is charter schools. Next is out of district.
Yeah, okay.
Then it's salaries and benefits, other benefits. So we have all of these obligations. So when they see 419 million, really what we have to work with is about 50 million. You know, so we have to be very careful that when we're looking at that number, that we're very clear on what we can actually spend, because Ortiz is like hitting the lottery for 419 million and you buy a home for 419 million. You're gonna be homeless within a week. So we have to make sure that we're always looking at all of our obligations, right? Which we never done is money bag, you know what I mean? Exercise. So viewers can really see that this is what I have to work with, $53 million.
Okay, thanks, Jane.
Are there any other questions?
So Jane, I'm out here with the rubber meets the road with the kids at the track meet at Hamilton High West. We're out here with the kids, Trenton High, out here running track, our girls and our boys. And this is where the rubber meets the road. And the money that we do have in this budget is really a good portion of it is focused on our salaries for our teachers that support our students, and our athletic budget that supports our athletes and our coaches and everything. Question is, from this point forward, right? What are the next steps to implementing our overall budget as we begin to spend this money beginning July 1 of 2023? What are the next steps that we're going to take to effectuate this budget where it gets approved and we can move forward with the actual expenditure of funds beginning in July 1 of 2023?
Great question. As you know, the governor changed our type 1 standing. He moved our date from March 4th to March 17th when our budget had to be uploaded to the county. So as we speak, the county is working with our district to approve our budget. So we did say that it has to be approved by tomorrow because we have to have an advertised budget in the paper by the 25th. So we can have our board meeting to give the presentation on a Monday. So we're working first to get the budget approved by the county BA and the county superintendent. Once we receive that approval, we will have at our board meeting on the 28th, we will present business office staff will present the 22-23 budget that was approved by the county. Then we'll get board approval. Then because we're a type 1 district, we will have another step, which is on Tuesday, we would have to have our budget approved by the Board of School Estimate. Now, they're not approving the budget. They're approving our tax levy, which is $23 million, which I showed you. If Denise would move up, you'll see where does money come from. It's the 6% that we receive from this city. So then that meeting is the 29th. And after that, we file our paperwork with the city so we can receive, start receiving that tax levy in September. And then the state, everything is approved with them. So we can start receiving our first allocation on September 8th from the state of New Jersey. That's the way the process works. And hopefully also, Gerald, will be in the, because you know how budget works. It's the planning, it's the preparation, then it's the adoption, right? So we're at the adoption phase. Then next is the implementation. So after all of the approvals, then the business office will start inputting all of the budgets, right? School-based budgets and central office budgets into our system, which is EduMat, because now it's in the state system. So we'll input it in our system. So then we can disperse our budgets to our principals for them to start preparing and spending down on their funding, but spend it in a line to how it was purposed. So then that's the implementation piece. Then it's a monitoring piece where we'll start monitoring our school budgets to ensure that they're spending according to the plan, which is the 5 pillars that we went over earlier, the strategic plan. And then we're back full circle at the evaluation and starting over again. So that's really the process for all school districts, except for if you're type 2, you don't have a BOES meeting.
This was an excellent presentation, Jane, and I'm looking to see if there's any other questions. I don't see anything. Mr. Ortiz or Mr. Trueheart, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I know that you know, we have our redistricting where we're adding schools. We added schools next year in F23. We're adding Stokes, West, a number of other schools. And if I'm a parent, I'm assigned. I got a letter. I'm assigned to go to Stokes. How do I know how much money my school is going to get in this budget? I mean, am I going to get everything I need to support my child in the budget? What's that process? What was that process like to allocate the money to all the different new schools that are coming online in our redistricting?
Yes, that's an excellent question. As I spoke about earlier, I spoke about all of our budget highlights that was given to us by our superintendent and our assistant superintendent for teaching and learning. So they ensured that every school, like I said, new adoption for math, 6th through 12th grade, new adoption for science, 6th through 8th grade, I believe, pilot programs, language arts, right, K through 8th grade. And from that, this will be the first time that with our pilot programs, and we're going to have about 2 or 3, that we're going to have data to look at and say, okay, this serves our children well, this curriculum does not. So we'll have data to see how to move forward for the 24-25 school year, which is something we've never had in the past. So we're going to also look at that. We're expanding on our, we're going to have G&T programs district wide in all of our schools. We're expanding on bilingual programming, which is excellent. They'll be in their home schools instead of being transported across town. Same with SPED. They'll be in their home schools. We're hoping, I know you asked about the budget, Gerald, but every budget receives supports consistent to what does a high-flying K-3 school look like, right? Not looking at what we had in the past. What does looking at our counterparts, right? What does that look like? What does an intermediate school look like 4th through 6th grade? What type of supports? Then let's move to 7th and 8th grade. 6th grade is no longer there, 7th and 8th grade. And then let's look at our high schools to make sure we had all of the supports that is needed. Then if we look at all the pillars that we looked at, student achievement and wellness and help me out, staff development and everything, facilities, if we look at that, right, and we're saying, oh, we hit on every component, then we know that our school budget, right, has come full circle. Now it's managing all of those supports that are outside of the classroom and managing the supports that are inside of our classrooms. So all of our K-3 schools, Gerald, are basically going to look alike, which is a good thing. And they'll be in their home area. Now, I know Mr. Ortiz, I know all of our letters went out, and I do know some of our parents, rightfully so, because we don't get everything right. And, we could have, you could have moved, or we could have moved you thinking you moved and you didn't. So we know there'll be things that we need to look at. Ortiz is going to go through any exceptions that we have, because we want to ensure that we're not putting our parents further away than they were for this current school year. Do you want to add anything, Ortiz, to that?
That's absolutely correct. We have the exemption letters that are available at the school. Parents can also have been coming to central office. And what they're requesting basically is that, and it's mostly in the K-3 schools, because we had to change attendance boundaries. So a lot of parents might think that, well, I live very close to the school. Why did they transfer me? Well, the reason the student was transferred was strictly based on the new boundaries, the new attendance boundaries that was put together by the demographer. That being said, we also now have to look even deeper, which means that if you're living 3 or 4 blocks from a school and we're moving you 1.5 miles, that is what we're looking at as an exception. So we are absolutely looking at that right now. One thing, Jane, that I wanted for you to touch on, and that is that a district has to be physically sound, because what happens is we get a lot of grant money, but explain to our community what drawing down means, because it's great to get all this money, but you don't actually get the money. It's not like you're getting all this money that's going immediately into the bank. So you have to be able to draw down money. And if you don't have money, then you can draw down. Something to that effect?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Prior to 2010, right, in 2008, all grant funding in May, they would give you the full allocation, put it in your bank accounts, and you had it, and you were able to do any type of summer programming that you chose, right? And the same with, and not just draw down on our grant funding, and also Ortiz, we're one of the few districts, because we're type 1, and because our city is on municipal overload, which is a formula you put in, we receive our first allocation basically September 8th. So even that is not like they're putting 419 million in my account. No, you have to understand how to make that work. It comes to 8th, it comes to 22nd. So I have to know, okay, what comes out of the 8th? These are our fixed costs. These are our costs that are not fixed, but they're in our budget. So you have to make sure you purpose all of that funding, because it's not like you're receiving the full allocation. Now, grants is even different. Grants, the way it works, when you have a program during the summer months, right? Not just summer. After the month has closed, which means whether it's 30 days or 31 days, an expenditure report is due to the state by the 15th of the following month. At that time, that report is sent in, then the state reviews everything, and they send it back to us and say yes or no, whether they'll accept it or whether they need additional information. After that, which is 60 days, then we may receive the allocation. It normally comes within 3 months. That's when the allocation comes. That's why it's very important that we use cash flow, or that I know what the programs are, so that I'm able to loan the district money and then do a transfer to receive the money back. Because the money is just not sitting in your account. It doesn't work like that. Well, I think a lot of people, you're right, Mr. Ortiz, they think that I have $419 million sitting in the account and I can do whatever. We wish, right, Gerald? We wish. It does not work like that. And you have to really manage this budget. And this is the truth, better than I manage my own budget. Because remember how many employees, if someone's not paid, fixed costs and everything. So you just have to make sure that you're up on all obligations every month.
It's like a house budget. I mean, if you don't pay your mortgage, you gotta have
you don't pay your
you gotta pay your
mortgage,
groceries, you gotta have food,
they're gonna come after
note,
us, right?
you got your insurance. So
You-
think about parents as you manage
Everything,
your health
you're right.
budget and your cash flow coming in and out. You got to make sure that you have enough cash at the end of the month to roll over to the next
But
month.
nobody thinks about that, Gerald,
Right.
when it comes
But
to
it's-
district budgets.
Yeah, it's the same process,
Yeah.
simplistically, for a school-based budget, where you have to manage your cash flow, you have to manage those special revenue funds, which is the grant funds, where you can't get those right up front. You got to spend the money first,
Right,
and you got to
and
get
then draw
reimbursed
down.
for those.
Right.
You know, so it's a challenging process, and we do it for the kids. We do it to impact student achievement and all the priorities and strategic plan goals that we have, to make sure that we are managing the budget effectively and the cash flow effectively. And that's, Jane focuses on that and other things, and does quite
Because
well.
if we don't, our students are at the core, right? So one bad move, right? That's going to affect our students, because like I always say, we all have, well, not us, because we're not in a union, but everyone is in a union, right? So they're going to get theirs because the union is going to come out if they don't, but the kids are not in a union. So I have to make sure that I have everything they need for them to succeed from September through June, right? With no hiccups. So if things come in that was not purposed, that's an issue, because who am I pulling it from? I'm not pulling it from anyone in a bargaining unit, right? Because their money is there. It's coming from our students. And that's why it's always an issue, because where is that funding going to come from? So I make sure that I always have money, or say, no, this wasn't purposed. And I don't know whether you know, Gerald, well, I'm sure you do. the county will no longer do transfers before December. Over 20%. Now he's saying December. Right, unless he said it's an emergency. And I said, well, that's up for interpretation. But anyway, that's something also that's new. And so it's becoming very difficult to be able to manage your money or to receive your money. I know you guys probably think it's easy, not at all. No. But that's the hand we're dealt, and everything we do, like I said, we do it with the students come first, and then everyone else is a byproduct of our students.
Jay, you pointed out where the fixed costs are and what we're receiving, and transportation was a big one because we always talk about transportation, right? And we get so much money from the state for transportation based on a formula of how the distance from a home school and all of that. But as we do the redistricting, we're looking at perhaps even additional costs for transportation that we have to take into account. Do you want to talk a little bit about transportation and how all the work that you're doing with after the demographer and how we're looking to support families that may have to cross safe areas that are not safe and safe passages and that, because that's going to be another cost that we have to add into the budget.
Yeah, I think, and that's another excellent question. I think you're right. As we look at how the money was allocated to our school district, they gave us, I believe, four point something in, I'm trying to look for the sheet, maybe 4 million, right? But if you go back to what I had up, transportation is at least 8 million. So it's almost doubled from what they allocate for us, right? But as I explained, that's at the time who was remote, because regardless of what we say, what we do, they're only paying for remote students because it's a state law, it's not district, state law, right? So as we were talking about the redistricting and with the demographer, and because, like you said, he redistrict, I don't know, every street or where he moved every line to. So we're having an expert come in from TransFinder, who's our transportation vendor, and he's going to help us to see how we can navigate through this transportation, because I can route, but I don't know. I'm not an expert at it. So first thing we're going to do, and Ortiz, you'll probably be with me, is get on the bus and say, show me where every child lives compared to the new configuration. I knew the others because I will ride those routes, but in the new, because I rode one and I said, isn't this further away? So I said, well, let me make sure I understand first so I can really see when the parents come back. And I can say, you're right, little Johnny. Maybe, that is something we need to look at. So that's step one, right? Because I can't do, as I said, if you don't understand yourself, right, then you're not going to be able to help someone else. So I need to see that. And then I need to see how he can then tell me, these are some things you can put in place. Is your system, like I told him, you're going to know what I can do to help my parents, right? Better than I can. So that's a good thing. They're coming in the first week of April. So I'm really excited about having them come in. But I'm also hoping, Gerald, that our intended purpose for the reconfiguration, redistricting, I always mix up the names, is that our kids, which is what they were looking for, that they can be with either their siblings or with their friends in their community. Like, I would hate for someone to be outside of my community. So we're hoping that everyone is in their community, all, not just that's segregated. We had a bilingual hub, SPED hub, no, gen ed, bilingual, SPED, they all can be in one school. And that's all the students that little Johnny plays with. So I'm hoping that is the case, but I'll know better after, after he comes in, which is the first week of April, and we can really iron all of this out, because that's very important. The food piece, which is something we also have to work with Fran on, because we're opening new schools, kitchens have to be upgraded, right? So especially like Jefferson and others, schools have been dormant for a while. So we need to look at West, and we need to look at Stokes and Robeson to ensure that our kitchens are up to par and up to code. And, are there going to be cooking sites? So we need to look at that because we're one of the few districts that all of our students, you get universal free breakfast and lunch, right? And what we have to do a better job on, I'm not sure whether you do this in Lawrence either, Gerald, is making sure that we allow some type of a mechanism or plan for our students to have breakfast after the bell, because that is a bill that the governor put in place. But we have to make sure that we're doing that. Any child, whatever time they come in, that breakfast is available for them. So no one have to pay any cost. You just have to fill out a survey. So I think that's very good too, with the food, transportation, because this is all about supporting our students and our parents, So we're really excited about the upcoming school year and to see how everything we've put in place, from the educational program, all the social and emotional supports, our staff wellness components, facilities, which I know Dwayne, he was on last time, all the things we're doing in facilities, transportation, the food program, it's all for our students, and our parents. So that's good. So we can start having our open house, we want to start April, May, so then they can come see it. It's not just all talk. They can come see it and say, oh, wow, look, they are putting their money where their mouth is. Because remember, where you put your money is what? If that's your priority, where your money goes. I always say you respect what you inspect. So that's what we're looking to do.
Jane, we are going to be organizing open houses for our families.
Yes.
Because our third graders will now be fourth graders. They're going to go to one of 6 intermediate schools. We only have 6 intermediate schools.
Mhm.
So those fourth grade parents will be able to go to the new intermediate school and visit the building, see the facility, talk to the principal, perhaps some teachers. So we're going to be organizing those visits, those open houses.
Yes.
We're also going, once our new schools are ready to open, which they will be for September, but we're going to spend some time doing open houses. So you parents who are going to get kids that are going to go to Stokes can go and see Stokes. And by that time, we're in the process of selecting the principals. And I know that you have worked with
head custodian,
resources for teachers and all of that stuff. So that's all of these pieces are being juggled all at the same time. And we want to thank you so much for your presentation today, Jane. Gerald, do you have any other questions?
I know the time went quickly. It's 5:22.
No,
I'm like, wow.
good stuff, Jane. Good work, Jane. I mean, we got the work cut out for us next year and future years. So we're about doing the work and making sure that our students get what they need and their parents get what they need. Great presentation. And I don't have any additional questions. I think we're going to have you come back to talk when we get ready to implementation of that budget, to talk more about the implementation, maybe after those open houses, and maybe parents will, at that time, will have additional questions or some questions from our chat. And so we'll definitely have you come back.
No problem.
On the broadcast. I want to thank you so much for being a part of our broadcast, taking your time. A lot of time to put this.
No problem.
This is your profession, so excellent job, and you took your time out to be a part of what we're doing here. So I appreciate you.
Can I just say something funny? I had more.
Yeah.
Ortiz said, you don't need all that. I just had to say that.
That sounds just like Ortiz. That sounds like Mr. Ortiz.
Yeah, too much.
He said, you got too much.
Oh, look at him. He's right there. He is. So what you got, Denise, for us? Any announcements? We got some announcements, right? How much time we got?
Absolutely. So we are continuing our Parent Connect Summit series, and our next parent event is Saturday, April 2nd. We want to encourage parents to sign up. I will leave that information in the Facebook live chat. So parents, please take advantage of coming to the summit. You can take advantage of participating in various workshops. Breakfast and lunch will be provided. Childcare will be provided. and lots of giveaways. We gave away an iPad on the 19th. This past Saturday, we had our first session, and it was well received from our parents and community. We had Miss Addie Daniels Lane as our keynote, and our next keynote speaker is Jacqueline De Leon. And we just look forward to sharing and building and encouraging you to become leaders in your schools. And we're just so excited to share this opportunity with all of you. Also, we have a meeting coming up next week with our Parents as Leaders group. And we're looking to launch parent support groups at 9 different school sites. So these parents have already gone through a leadership training, 6 weeks worth of training. They're certificated now, and they have all the resources that they need to facilitate their own school support group for parents. So more to come on that for our next session, because we're running out of time, but we're really excited. And I just wanted to shout out the schools that those groups will be starting at: PJ Hill, Kilmer, Dunn, MLK, Hedgepath, the high school. So Mr. Trueheart, you will receive information from that parent leader in regards to starting that group. And I believe Kilmer School as well. Hopefully I didn't repeat that. And we're just really excited. These parents will be receiving a stipend for leading these groups. And we're just excited to continuing the momentum of engaging our parents as partners so that we can continue to close the gap between home and school. That's all I have for today. All right, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a lovely evening. Everything will be streamed on our YouTube channel in case you missed certain parts of it. So please subscribe to Trenton TV, and it will later be on our WIMG radio station, AM 1300. So stay tuned later tonight at 7 p.m. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.